Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton, and this is episode 185. And today we're going to be talking about the least discussed aspect of emotional eating. All right, guys, so emotional eating. I have a perspective where there's a difference between emotional eating, which almost every human engages in to some degree, right? That's eating cake at a party. That's celebrating with a meal out. Some degree of eating during socializing, eating based somewhat on how you feel. I'm not an advocate of completely divorcing food from emotion. I think that that's healthy, actually, to have a certain degree of connectedness between eating, celebration, emotion. What I am against is what I would call disordered emotional eating or emotional overeating. Subtly different, but in the same umbrella, right? A lot of times when people talk about emotional eating, my take is they're really talking about disordered emotional eating or emotional disordered eating. Just doesn't sound right grammatically, but I guess it is more right conceptually. There's a pattern, right, that happens with emotional eating. There's a trigger of some kind. That trigger can be boredom. It doesn't have to be an intense emotion. Right? But I think probably the most common emotional eating trigger is boredom. And then it leads to the behavior, the eating. So trigger, behavior, response. And so usually it's feeling or thought or circumstance, trigger. So take like boredom. I'm bored. It'll be helpful if I eat something. It'll help me change my state. I'll feel more entertained. I'll feel distracted from my boredom, that emotion I don't want to feel. Yes, boredom is an emotion. So I don't want to feel this emotion. I'm going to do something to change my state. I'm eating. It's altered my state. I now feel relief, right? Now, for many of us, there's a feedback loop that then that relief is very short-lived, leads to the new emotional trigger of shame and guilt and doubt and bad feelings, judgment about what you're eating. And then it's a emotional eating spiral instead of just a circle. But one of the things that we don't talk about a lot in terms of emotional eating, because we'll often think, oh, I'm going to eat to make myself feel better. Right? I feel bad or I feel something I don't want to feel. I eat, I feel better. But there's a stage and a state that many of us get to in this disordered emotional eating cycle that I think of as more self-harm. So it's that punishment of eating. Stick with me because it's messy. It's not always true. But it is often true as we spiral out of control with our disordered eating that we get to a stage where we no longer get what I would call like significant relief in a positive way from the negative or undesired emotions when we eat. So, when we're not in the depths of it necessarily, we might feel better after we eat, at least until some of the thought repercussions, guilt or shame set in. There's at least a period, at least while we're eating maybe, that we're enjoying the experience, that we have a pleasurable pocket. But there can be a way that sometimes for some of us, we might be eating, and though we have some degree of pleasure from the eating, there's also a component of pain that's happening while we're eating. So that cycle is sped up so much that we're actually in the guilt and shame as we're putting the food in our mouth. And we're also in an awareness as we're eating it that this food doesn't feel all that great. That this experience is not that hedonistic wonder that I was looking for. And in that, when we get into this place, into this cycle, what we're actually doing is eating as a punishment for wanting to eat, eating as a punishment for being in a body we don't want to be in. It's a self sort of satisfaction. See, I knew I was worthless. See, eating is all that's there for me because I can't change. See, you are a POS or a whatever. It's a self-confirmation of your negative self-thoughts. And sometimes this can be just incredibly painful to come to realize because it is like, it's hitting bottom for a lot of people. It's that experience of, I don't even have this anymore. I don't even have these 5 minutes of binging that will bring me a hit of my drug. It's when our dopamine receptors become when we're just, if you think about it in terms of like drug use, it's when you stop getting high and you just get normal. That you need to be on your drug of choice simply to exist. That the anxiety of the withdrawal from it is so intense that just engaging in the behavior is required for functioning. But you don't get a high anymore, or you don't get much of one. And the things that used to get you high don't get you high anymore. And when you're on this eating cycle, it can be incredibly scary because it feels inevitable. It feels like a requirement simply for being a part of the world. But it's sort of like the emotional version of, you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And you eat more and you eat more because it is a cycle of self-harm. It's really bleak, people. Like you're talking about this, I'm like, is everyone okay out there? Deep breaths, deep breaths. If this is you, this might be triggering, right? But I want you to feel seen here. I see you. This is not okay. This is a degree of self-harm that is so hurtful. And I know this place because I've lived this place. And I just wanted to make this episode because I just did a presentation where I talked about this a little bit, and it made me think, gosh, I don't know that people are talking about this component enough. We think of emotional eating as kind of a light thing, or maybe not that light. We don't tend to go to the bottom. What is the bottom? Where is the bottom of emotional eating? And it tends to be this place. Which is why I'm like, hey, let's look at this as a spectrum. And on one end of the emotional eating spectrum, it's pretty much just normal behavior. And then it goes from there. And knowing what intervention is required is really about knowing where the harm is, what are the repercussions, and where are you in this spectrum of behavior, response, and emotion. So I just wanted to put it out there that if you're in this spiral, if you're in this dark place where you're like, I don't even know why I do it anymore. It's not that fun and it's not that pleasurable, but I can't stop. I just want you to know that that's normal too. It's not like good, but it's not unexpected when you are in a spiral with disordered eating. I feel like the first part of fixing something is understanding it. And if you can understand this, you can start to reverse out of it. And if you need me, you know where to find me. I'm Kim at kimhowerton.com, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.